What's going on? This time I will be drawing Edward Wu from Kengan Omega. And also don't forget the like button and subscribe if you haven't. And I'm going to be drawing his face, and also I'll be shading it at the end of the video to show the process of shading as well. As you see, when doing the face, I'm trying to get the structure right. So I'm putting in the circles for the head, and then the line shape, and also I'm adding in details. And I'm working off a reference with this one because I was focusing more on doing the shading or teaching the shading aspects of this video. So right now I'm just adding in a lot of details, giving him his little cheekbones because he has those strong facial features, which is what they usually do on the Kengan series. And I'm trying to, and usually when I'm adding in the blue, I'm trying to add kind of as much as I can sometimes, because sometimes I want to add the inks in, and when I'm adding the inks, I want to make sure that I know where to put everything and not forget certain features or certain things that I had to add into the piece. So when I'm getting the teeth, make sure the teeth is rounded out, adding in all of his wrinkles, and also his hair. And his hair has some crazy detail in it, which you'll see when I start adding in the marker shade. And sometimes I like to use the gray tones. A lot of pieces you'll see me use grays in a lot of my markers, shading and things like that, only because when shading in the gray tones, it's easier for me for whenever I decide to add color to it. I'll just take it into Photoshop and overlay it with different layers to color it, and use pretty much altering the grays and making it and giving it color. And if I wanted to make it like a full color piece, or if I was planning on making a color piece, then I would just leave it as outlines. But the majority of the time, sometimes I like to plan on coloring it later on, so I just use grays in it and color it digitally later. So right now I'm going in the pencils, with the pen, to get those hair in there, adding a lot of detail because he has like a little weird texture in his hair where it's like just lines, and then he has triangles, darkening the teeth, and his little iconic eyes. Since he seems to have those same eyes as Oma when Oma gets into his rage state. Now with the markers, you see when I'm adding in markers, I always make that base shade, and that base shade is easy to do. You're looking at the picture, or you're going off reference, or no matter what you're doing, you use that shade as kind of a way to find the shadows. So you're finding out where the shadows are in whatever you're doing when you're drawing the hands, arms, face, or muscle structures. When you're making this base shade and you're figuring out where the shadows are, it'll be easier to figure out where the rest of it is. I can either do it this way, or I can fill the skin completely with a lighter shade, then use this color as a dark shade. But sometimes I like to just use this as my base shade, and then all the white areas would be the light sources coming down onto the piece. And now I'm using the darker gray. I'm going to use dark gray to go over it eventually. And right now I'm just adding in the lines because in the Kengan series, those particular characters, they have a lot of cross-hatching in their details and skin compared to when you're drawing the Baki characters. Adding in more detail. You see I'm adding in a darker shade, kind of going over it. Sometimes I like to add darker shade over lighter shade. Sometimes if I feel that the lighter shade that I've added to it is a little bit too light, even though I was kind of satisfied with the last shade that I had on there, but I wanted to make it a little bit darker. So I went over it with a darker tone gray. Getting his details, trying to get in his hair. And because that's the benefits of having a brush marker, you can make those little paint strokes in the hair. Because I have regular markers too, because I have these versions, Winsor Newton brush markers now also have the Winsor & Newton regular markers. The brush markers I use more often because it's easy to make those thick to thin strokes with the lines. And with the regular Winsor & Newton markers, you just get kind of go over, if I'm going over a large area. You can also get thick to thin lines depending on how you move the markers. It's easier to do with brush markers. It doesn't even have to be these particular markers. You can use, like, they have Copic brush markers and different brands you can find on Amazon. So right now I'm adding in some more blacks, making the background black. I wanted to make the background black so I can kind of make the face pop out a little bit more. Black background, or I could just add a regular background, but I want to make it black. I'm just darkening the outlines, adding in more touches to it. And it's kind of another reason why I like using pencil. I don't want to have to erase the whole thing with a rubber eraser before going to a pen, when I can just use a blue pencil and then go straight over with the inks and then marker. Not have to worry about smudging. So I'm just darkening his clothes. And right now I'm using a whiteout pen, and I like to use whiteout when I'm doing certain shadow areas where I know it's going to be certain light source that I may have colored over, and sometimes I may use it to cover up mistakes. But more than often, I like to use it. I mean, there's certain whiteout pens you can use, and it's hard to find a good brand because a lot of whiteout pens aren't opaque enough. And sometimes I'll have I have this version, and I have a Copic white ink, which I also like to use, and that's probably the whitest as you can go as far as white ink. But a lot of them don't really, I guess, darken or are not light enough. Sometimes you may still see through it, but a majority of them, it's hard to find that one with the thickness of just being full white without being see-through and watered down. A lot of them are usually watered down, so it's hard to find that good one. So I say the Copic ink will be the best option. That's the one I like to use. So right now I'm just finishing it off, adding in more detail. I wanted to go in there and fill in some more light grays, but I kind of left it as it is because I figured I'm trying to match the reference I'm drawing from, keep it fairly identical. It's just a few touches I added to it to make it a little bit different. And each method I'll use for shading these characters are pretty much similar, and the method that's used in this is the way I like to shade, which is perfect for this picture. But if you like this video, you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. All right, take care.